Join us live every Tuesday from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on GluFM for Minding Your Business with me, Attorney Rishma Eckert, to discuss the law and your business. Email us with your questions at info@mybshow.com. And remember, success comes from minding your business. Welcome to Minding Your Business. I am your host, Rishma Eckert of Eckert Law PLLC, and we are in season 2, folks. We are in season 2 of the show. We started off the show really strong this month with the foreign minister from Guyana, along with Mr. Kamal Samaru, who is the CEO of the DDL, who makes El Dorado rum. And we started off with that. The next week we talked about, we had a fireside chat that I had done over the weekend in collaboration with Aria Lightfoot and with Toucan View. So that was my first collab with Minding Your Business and another podcast. So we aired that. The third week, I was very, very, very ill. Thankfully, it's not COVID. And we had to take a little break. So now I am back feeling so much better. And it lined up where I've been trying to get Priscilla back on the show for a while, but she's busy traveling the world. While I was coughing up my lungs, Priscilla was traveling the world. And I got to see it all on her social media while I was on my couch. So we're so happy to have her back, but let me do my intro and then we'll get into the meat of this. Again, to all our listeners out there, if you can go ahead and like our Facebook page, it's at MYB Radio Show. Go ahead and follow us so you can see our promotional flyers, information about our guests, and sometimes I put resources up there as well, and the bios of our guests so you get a better feel for the show. We also still do our MYB Small Business Spotlights, where we highlight a company, we talk about the entrepreneur, we talked about why they got into business in the first place, and it's a great way for you to do your promotion of your products and your services. I have 3 people that I need to call to schedule times to be on the show. I'm so sorry if I haven't called you yet, but people love talking about their businesses and getting the publicity for their businesses and the marketing for their businesses. And I really appreciate the support of our listeners. And I will, in time, now that I'm catching up with everything, be able to call you and schedule a date that you can be on the show. Again, we're in Florida, New York, Kentucky, UK, Canada, parts of Africa, parts of Asia, Jamaica. So we are pretty global and we're out there and people can get to hear about you and your wonderful business. We also have a segment called Ask MYB, where our listeners can pretty much run the show, meaning that you tell me what it is that you want me to talk about, what topic of law, what topic in business that you would like me to cover, or if you would like for me to elaborate on something that I've talked about. In the past, people have asked me, can you do another copyright show? I really want to learn more about that. And I've done that. In the past, people have asked, listeners have asked, can you cover licensing? Because you haven't done that before, and I made an entire show of it. So this is an opportunity for you, our listeners, to be able to let me know what you want me to cover and what's going to be relevant to your business. Now, with every show, I always start off with a quote, and this quote is by Heather Ash Amara, and she says, "Change is inevitable, but transformation is by conscious choice." And I absolutely love that quote because today we're talking about transforming your business model. I have a very special guest, friend of the show, friend of mine, client of mine, in full disclosure as well, client of mine, Miss Priscilla Dames. Thank you, Priscilla, for coming back to the show. For our listeners in our season 2 Minding Your Business show.
Stop me.
Just your background, and you have a very interesting background, so I definitely want them to hear about that.
Well, I'm full disclosure. I have no problem saying my age. I'm going to be 70 next year, and is that's very, very much a part of this transformation that I'm going through. And I am going through it on several different levels, which I'll get into in a few minutes. But Wingspan Seminars has been my baby for a long, long time. I have been a trainer with topics relative to conflict for 4 decades, 40 years. And that's a very, very long time. Though Wingspan Seminars is only about 20 years old, but the Anti-Defamation League, so as to speak, discovered me when I was in the audience, and it was The World of Difference, which some of you may remember, Dwight Lauderdale and his partner. And it was a huge, huge workshop for educators downtown. And I went, and there was a bigot that had the nerve to stand up and talk. And I crossed my arms, and I was looking at him with this ugly, ugly face. And that face ended up on the front of the Miami Herald because I responded to what he was saying. But good things came out of that. The Anti-Defamation League invited me to be a consultant / trainer. And that's how I got my start. They sent me all over the state of Florida to racially tense areas. And I'm purposely giving that story because I have come full circle now with one of the things that I've been doing. The Wingspan Seminars is based in conflict. And when I started my doctorate in conflict resolution, I added conflict resolution on with several other topics. And our mission basically, and it's a tagline, is creating safe environments while strengthening relationships, because there's so much having to do with safe environments today. So I had to add that and include that with
Conflict
talking
resolution.
about conflict. Yeah. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your international, your global work as well. I find that very interesting.
Now I'm going to leave the piece that you know best to last. Number one, I absolutely love to travel. That's been with me until since I was very, very young. I think I probably should have been an anthropologist because I love learning about different cultures, but how is that tied into conflict resolution? Believe it or not, every culture addresses conflict in a different way. And I wanted to learn about how various cultures address conflict. And so I had to get permission for my internship when I was working on my doctorate. And I did get that permission, and from the King and Nonviolence Center in Florida. And I started it at the Conflict Resolution Center in Kenya. And I ended that internship in Cuba. And one of the big things that I learned was, because by that time I was a Supreme Court vested mediator, is that Kenyans do not trust mediation. I've done several things in Kenya over the years, but ending it in Cuba was very interesting too, because I learned that one of the largest Kenyan nonviolence centers is in Cuba, and people fly in from all over the world to learn there. And there's a huge portrait of Martin Luther King, a mural of Martin Luther King there on the wall. But if I may, if I could share my number one, my favorite job that I've gotten. I always wanted not just to train out of the country. I've done quite a bit of that, but I wanted to train in a developing country in my area of expertise, which is based in conflict, and get paid for it. And the reason I say that is because I have been so involved with so much community service over time. I mean, years and years and years and years. And that was before I even became a trainer. And so that was my dream. It's like, oh my gosh, when is it going to happen? When is it going to be my turn? And then all of a sudden, and I had been invited to be on other teams, but not with all of those extra parameters and variables that I wanted. So I was invited to train ex-militants in Nigeria, and we trained them in Kenyan nonviolence, and it was transformational, talking about transformation, transformational nonviolence. And they had been fighting the government, some of them for decades. And so the people that were in my audience, it was 100 men, and they were from age 16 to 70. And it was supposed to be a 2-week contract, and it ended up being 18 months, a year and a half that I went back and forth, and it was for the government. It was the most exciting thing. It was scary initially, but because I was training ex-militants, and they didn't know if I was a spy representing their government. They just rope them in or what. But when they realized that I was true to it, and it was a team that invited me, their guard went down after being able to cut the atmosphere with a knife. And it was so exciting. It was all men, so exciting. And every time a group of them, the ex-militants, women and men, agreed to lay their arms down, they would call the team back. So I went back and forth for a year and a half. That was just the most exciting training I have ever had. And so I'm going to stop and let you ask the next question.
Right. I mean, I didn't realize it was a year and a half that you had done that. I know that you had trained ex-militants, but I didn't realize that it was for that long of a period of time that you were there.
Oh, yeah. And it was probably the most exciting training I've ever had. And it was just so highly unusual. But I did basically the same kinds of things that I did in other trainings, even though some of them could not speak English, but there was an interpreter there, and the other men would help them out. But it was just very, very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show when we talk about transformation, if you can transform the way that ex-militants are, their behavioral skills, then shoot, no one should have an excuse of why they should do that, right? I mean, I can't imagine the work that went in to teaching those soft skills.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, and the whole package included that training, but the other part of that package was if you agree to put your arms down and stop fighting and killing folks, then we will help you transform yourself back into society and help you get a job. So that was the other part of that
job training. Yeah.
Yes. So it was a true transformational package that was offered to them.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. That's definitely a lot of information about just your background and your training. How has the pandemic affected your business specifically, your conflict resolution business?
I am still going through my transformation. I am transitioning to a whole different model. And if I could explain to the audience, I don't want to run out of time. If I could explain to the audience.
Yes, please do.
There's a very big difference in a business model and a business plan. The business model itself looks at 3 things, and this is the groundwork that you should always have at the very beginning. Who is your customer? What is your audience base? For me, it was what was my audience. Who is your customer? What are their needs and wants? And 3, how are you going to make some money? You should never, ever, and since I started with community service, which I had been doing since I was a teenager before I came to Florida, it was unusual for me to expect money for what I did. So it took me a while to get there, probably with the Anti-Defamation Leagues. That's where it began, because prior to that, I wasn't charging anything for anything that I did.
That's right. And then when we met, one of my first questions is, how are you making money on this? Remember? And you thought, oh, okay, yeah, let's talk about that. Because you're switching gears now if you're doing community service versus running a business, which is what this show is focused on. It is making sure that you are effectively running your business where it sustains you. We're not talking about hobbies. We're talking about a business.
Yes, yes. And when I first met Rishma, I had, without planning to, I had stepped away from the business because I got so caught up, and I was excited because I had created a group called Fabulous, and it was just all professional women, and we were having a great time together. It started out being a party. We ended up being on the front of a magazine, and even the publisher kept saying, okay, but what's your logo? What's the name of your business? And I kept saying, there is none. It's not a business. We just got together for a party, and there have been a lot of women, and are having fun. So I end up changing it into a business, but that's when I met Rishma. It was really amazing because I hired an artist, Carol Brown. I love Carol Brown. And I told her I wanted her to do a painting called Fabulous, showing all these women that had come to the party. And she said, what do you want the painting to be alike? Or tell me something about it. And I said, I don't know. So I gave her several pictures of ladies that were at the party. And it was fabulous. Her painting I still really love. And then I said, okay, it was beautiful. I can make fabric out of this. So then I made fabric out of it. And then I started creating different items. And I think I must have lost my mind because I had forgotten how much I enjoy working with my hands and just creating things. I had gotten away from that.
That's right. And when we met, you had purses, you had tote bags, you had jackets, you had notebooks. Priscilla had a wide array of merchandise for her business. So of course, my question is always, how are you making money on this? And let's go ahead and that was the problem. So we're transitioning from hobby to business, and we have to start talking about what you said for number 3. It has to be a way to make money. So
and I wasn't trying to make money though, because Fabulous was not supposed to be
a business. Yeah.
I got carried away with it so much so that Wingspan kind of went to the side. And I was just having fun with the ladies, which was what it was supposed to be about, just being able to breathe and support each other. And then when I started creating products, I was like, ooh, I forgot how much I like these. And it just went on and on and on and on. And when Rishma, when I came to you, one of the things that I said after, I think, the second meeting, because I came to you because of Wingspan, and I think you thought I had mugs and pencils and pens, but I had all of this.
You brought an entire showroom in the conference room. I remember you laying out everything, and I thought, oh my goodness, where do I even begin with this?
I have a confession to make.
What?
Because just like Lisa and I, we didn't have any business concept in mind to do this. The whole idea was for me to talk again. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So she was very instrumental in getting everything together to have me go back to what I used to be. Right. Yeah. And then once I met Andrea turned to Rishma, now she had been thinking of business. Am I making money from it? What are we going to do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's, again, that's my wheelhouse. So for me, if I hear that you're passionate about something and that you have the skill set to back it up, because obviously, I'm one of those people where if you come to me and you sing awful, I'm never going to encourage you to be a singer. But if you have the skill set and this is your passion, why not? And Mark, we talk a lot about on the show, Priscilla as well, we talk a lot about the fact that you can have hobbies. I don't have anything against people having their hobbies. But when you're serious, and my logo is Our Clients Mean Business, because when you're ready to transform that hobby into a business, we got to switch up that mindset.
Yes.
It's a complete transformation.
Yes.
And I think the same thing with Mark and Lisa. When I started talking,
Yes.
they were like, whoa, wait a minute, what are we doing? And I kind of overwhelmed them a little bit in the beginning, but that's necessary, because if you're going to make that leap and you commit to that leap, you have to commit all the way, because I'm not being a business attorney for someone's hobby. That's not how that's not my business model. I need to have a business, like a profitable business where you can sustain yourself. So, yeah, it was a very interesting conversation, because I remember telling Priscilla, do you want to keep this as a hobby, or do you want to make money out? Like, you tell me what you want to do, because she had plenty of other companies that I could have advised her on. So it was, a matter of, if you're making that transition, and we're talking about transforming business models, if you want to make that jump, then we have to get serious about it, and we have to ask the tough questions. And more importantly for me, are you making money off of it? Because if you're not making money off of it, or you don't have a trajectory where you're going to make money off of it, then you have a hobby. I'm sorry, but you do, right? So, but yeah, Priscilla, you were talking about that, the three things, and then you switched your business model completely after the pandemic.
And it was, just to let the audience know, it was very, very interesting, because I wanted to keep the women on track as far as their whole purpose of being together, because most of them are business owners, was to have fun and support each other. It wasn't to form a new business. And so Rishma was telling me, well, you could do both, just separate it, which is what I did. So I still have the group of fabulous women, but the fabulous merchandise was formalized under Rishma. And then I'm going to tell you the travel part that was included in that too, because that's part of the long range plan that I had, and I'm still working. So, yeah. But I wanted to tell the audience that that's the business model, and that third part where you've got to decide how you're going to make money, because if it's a business, that means you need to figure out how you're going to do that. And that leads into the business plan, which the business plan explains in detail how you're going to make that work. It includes finances, all kinds of how you're going to reach your audiences for marketing. And all kinds of activities of what you're going to do to reach that goal of making money. And so it's very, very different from the model.
You're switching your business model from the 1, 2, 3 that you said. And what is it? What are those changes that you're making? Either big changes, little changes. What are the changes to your business that you're making?
They are big. Some of them are bigger than I had planned. They're not what I planned. It was the summer of 2019. So this was pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. I was very sick. Like you were saying, you had to put things to the side. Yeah. I was very sick, refused to go to the hospital. And basically all I could do was, and I didn't watch television much, because if you're really, really sick, the television, you're oblivious to that. But I did have my iPad, so I did lots of research, and I thought probably too much. And I said, with me, now this was 2 years ago, but with me being the age that I was, you have to look at yourself. I didn't think I was going to die, but I still did a lot of soul searching while I was sick, which lasted a while. And I had to ask myself, are you fulfilling your purpose? That was number one. And number two, are you getting out of life what you want to get out of it? Because we only have this one chance. Yeah. And I didn't think I was going to die or anything, but, it's like
a reevaluation. It's a reevaluation.
It was a true reevaluation, and I had so much time to think about it. And so I decided there were 3 areas in my life that I wanted to work on and I needed to work on. One was health. A second one was my own household, including my relationship with family, started with my husband, and 3 was business. And so, and I wrote everything down. I keep journals all the time, so I write everything down. So I said, okay, which one can you really research and talk about right now? Do that self-talk. And I did a lot of self-talk. So I brainstormed with myself all kind of business ideas. I absolutely love being a trainer. And I have found locally, nationally, and internationally. But it was always face-to-face.
Yeah.
Whether I created the seminar, Wingspan Seminars, or a company, a business, or a school hired me, in churches too. It's always face-to-face, and I absolutely love that because I love seeing the people, literally touching them, walking through my audience. So I've really enjoyed that. But if you're going to be face-to-face with people all the time, that really limits you as far as mobility.
Yeah.
And so I said, one of the things that I decided was I was going to learn, and it was truly a learning situation, learning how to create a webinar. That was major, and I was going to use one of my popular topics to learn how to create a webinar. And the second goal was to finish the book that I started, I finally finished it. 99 Conflicts to Avoid. It's on Amazon. Shameless plug, it's on Amazon.
No, tell us about the book. I mean, this is for you to be able to highlight your business. So by all means.
I started this book now it's been 7 years ago, 6 years ago. It was all the bells and whistles. I had fantastic testimonials on the back. Parts of it was funny. It started out being about ridiculous conflicts that you have to learn how to laugh at yourself. And I did a lot of interviews too. And there's a couple of chapters in there that's by someone else. And so I had done so much with this book. I said, at least finish it, Priscilla. So that was a second goal. And a third goal, which I thought was going to be the most difficult, was I had been invited on so many different teams. I said, now you've done this long enough. I mean, at that point, it was like at least 38 years, that you should be able to do and host an international seminar yourself. So, and the idea was just to do one, at least try it. It's going to take a lot of work, developing relationships, but at least try it. And so those were my 3 goals, 2019. Now, you want to ask me another question or shall I keep going?
I'm getting from you, because we're talking about transforming businesses. And I want to just add that whole reachability issue that you're talking about, and we all felt it in our businesses as well. So instead of being at an office where I have clients come in and we talk about the issue or they sign their retainer agreement, now everything 100% remote for me. I mean, I'm not ever going back to how it was before because it's working well for me. But I think those are the types of changes that a lot of companies have to make. What is it that you can just automate? What is it that you can do on your email, on your computer? And yes, there is a value to being able to see someone face to face and interact with them. And there's that comfort that you have with someone, but that's why Zoom is here. You can Skype, you can WhatsApp video, you can Facebook video. There's still that you can have where you don't have to feel as isolated in getting your clients, and even like you join your webinars. Yes, there's a value to walking through the crowd and having them play out scenarios for you with your conflict resolution. But in lieu of that, I mean, safety comes first. So now in transforming your business, you could probably do a mixed bag, right? When this is over, you can do a mix. So you can still service people in a different country, and then you can do the in-person ones here when you're allowed to do that. So I think that reevaluation process, you were saying that you did that when you were ill. I think the entire country went through some sort of reevaluation at that point where people were getting furloughed, people were getting fired from their jobs, people were getting less hours in their jobs, and they really sat back. A lot of the new companies that have formed during the pandemic was exactly that story where, I don't want to put my life in my livelihood in someone else's hand. I want to do my own thing. And I absolutely love that because I'm such an advocate for entrepreneurship, but I think it's the same thing. It's that reevaluation and changing your model and going from in-person to remote, or going from, well, maybe I need you to sign this, but I'll send you via DocuSign. And that's just as good, right? So it's doing that transformation that I think is fantastic. And now that you have a book, look at that. You made real good use of your time, huh? You have a book that you're putting out there. And of course, the first thing I think of when I see that book is we have to copyright it. We have to copyright it. That's the first thing I think of when I see a book. But
Can I talk about you for a minute?
Talk about me?
Yes.
Only if it's nice things. Go ahead.
Of course.
Mark is laughing.
Now, Rishma has fast forwarded and she has kind of jumped. But let me tell you, this was pre-COVID when I came up with those 3 goals. And so I told Rishma, and anytime, she's very, very formal when it comes to her business, okay? So when I saw her, and it must have been a business meeting, I told her I was getting ready to go to South Africa. Remember I said one of the things that I was missing was traveling so much. I told her I was getting ready to go to South Africa, and she says, oh, that's wonderful, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then I told her why, because one of my goals were I wanted to host a seminar in another country. And she looked at me like I was losing my mind. And she said, Priscilla, you don't have to go all the way to South Africa to find a place to host. And she invited me to go to Belize. She's from Belize. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now, South Africa was on my big list. So I needed to, I'm having an affair with Africa. So I needed to go there. But I thought about that for like 5 seconds. And I'm like, oh, go with you? And you're from Belize? Okay, it was even better than I expected. She told me about the business expo that was going on in Belize. And it was I'm almost positive it was in October.
It was September-ish. It was September-ish, yeah.
It was really soon. And at first I thought, I can't afford to go to South Africa, which was already paid for, and Belize back to back. But then the more I thought about it, I said, shoot, she's from Belize. She's an attorney. She probably knows everybody in the world. And she's talking business expo. So timing is key. And so I made myself afford both. It was the most wonderful trip because that led to me accomplishing that goal that I thought was going to be the most difficult goal. And maybe I'll get to that one by the end of 2020. But I went with the American Belize Chamber with
Belize American Chamber, yeah.
Yes, and Rishma is on the board. So I was with the right people. I think I met everybody in the world there.
Everyone under the sun, everyone that I can drag you and say, come on, you have to meet this person. Come on, you got to at least shake hands with this person. This is pre-pandemic, guys.
Truly amazing. Even the morning that I was to leave, I had an appointment with some key educators. I think it was the Minister of Education that Michael had taken care of to make sure that I met them, but it was a formal meeting. But so much so, I was on the radio. We had the delegation from the United States had a table in the ambassador's tent. And that's when I found out that one of the country's targets was domestic violence. But I met so many people while I was there. The women's department, Belize, that was key also, because the Rotarians, I'm from the Rotary Club of Miami, the Rotarians I met there, it was so wonderful that I was able to keep in contact with them, especially the women's department.
Mm-hmm.
And they became the #1 supporter. And I was able to pull off, and I did have to go back and forth to learn more about the country, where would I do a summit, and those folks that really supported me there, which was the women's department of Belize, to just to massage those relationships. So I went back and forth, and it was like, wow, I couldn't believe that I was able to pull off the international summit by March, which was Women's History Month. And we focused on domestic violence because that was a conflict in
Belize.
But it was amazing. I couldn't believe it. And the day before the summit, it was a WOW Summit, Wings on Women. I was on their #1 morning show, which is Open Your Eyes. And in December, I remember when it was. In December, you introduced me to Artie. I remember it very well. And this was Rishma's sister. And she thought that we would be able to work well together. And that was
it,
because her background was in marketing and PR. She got me on the morning show, and I invited her to come with me on the morning show, which she did, which was great because my area of expertise was not domestic violence. However, it was one of her platforms.
It was one of her platforms.
And so
exactly.
she could talk about it. So I talked about what I was an expert at, and she talked about what she was an expert at. It was great. They said they would have us on about 15 minutes. We were there the whole show.
I know. I was watching from Florida, and I was late to work that day because I thought, well, I'm just going to watch your segment, and then I'm going to go get ready for work. And then they wouldn't stop. So I actually ended up going late. But that just goes to show what you're saying is good for our listeners to hear, because you have to be able to have the right resources. I always stress resources. I got a call the other day from a junior attorney just past the bar, is, looking for help in doing something. And I said, yeah, use me as a resource. And he almost fell off his chair. And he thought, oh, well, yes, you're going to help me. And I said, yeah, because at the end of the day, that junior attorney is not going to be in competition with me, who's been practicing for 7 years. And I have my clientele. So I don't see it as a threat. And I was willing to help. The same thing with businesses. Find people who are good assets for you, mentors, big help with mentors, and just being able to find the pockets of people that you could pull on for different resources. So your entire goal was completed because we just had a conversation. We had a conversation, and I was able to encourage you to come to Belize, something that I'm very passionate about as well. And you were able to do that. So very important in business. Pick your resources. Hand pick it. You just don't go wherever someone is telling you to go. You really do that assessment like you did. You went through how you did that assessment of why you should go to Belize, and it worked out great for you. And I was just really happy. Relationships, exactly.
So important. And talking about conflict, and that's why strengthening relationships is part of Wingspan's tagline, because it's much more difficult to beat somebody up, whether it's physically or verbally, if you know that person well, if you respect that person, if you love that person. So massaging those relationships are so very, very important. Yes, you were my business attorney and you were very, very formal, but massaging that relationship was important, or else you probably would not have allowed me to go with you and Michael and the delegation.
But and another point I want to just add to that for business owners out there it's the relationship, yes, but it's also knowing what that person's goal is.
Yeah.
That was the most important thing, because I knew you had to go to our business expo because you told me what you were looking for.
Yeah.
You were looking for micro vendors, women to for your products. You told me exactly what it is that you're looking for. So I was able to match that in my head. Now it's very important. You own a business, you let people know what you do. So just as by way of an example, my very first Mind in Your Business show that I did, I kind of went through the life cycle of a business, and I talked about the things that I knew how to do, just from the incorporation to this and that and contracts and dissolutions. And after that show, I got a call from my best friend, and she goes, I finally know what you do for a living. And this is someone I've known since I was about 17 years old. So it's one of those things where if you have a business, you have to talk about what you want to do. What is it that you want to do? What it is that you can do? Because sometimes people don't make that connection immediately, right? So it's a relationship building and always being that number one marketer for your company. And you always have to have your elevator pitch. Every business that I've included in Mind in Your Business, I have an elevator pitch. If someone says, what is it that you do? I know exactly in 30 seconds to tell you what I do. So it's very, very example of an opportunity, because you were prepared, Priscilla. You were saying, this is the goal that I want to get done. I'm prepared to go after it. And then everything just aligned completely for us to be able to do that. And I'm glad. And I know everything kind of got thrown back because of COVID, and we haven't had our trade missions for the last 2 years because of COVID, but we're going to get back to that space. And we're going to get back to it.
I do want to make an appointment with you and Michael Young, who's the president of the chamber, because I do want to talk about that. But you fast forward that. So in March, Women's History Month, I had accomplished the goal that I thought was going to be the most difficult.
Right.
I was
in the span of a year, like 6 months, I think. In 6 months, you had accomplished what you put on your list to do.
And I thought that was going to be the last thing. Hopefully, I would get there by the end of the next year, which was the end of 2020. And I couldn't believe it. I had accomplished it in March. And when we returned from the summit in Belize, that's when the Governor DeSantis, had begun to close things down because of COVID that same month in March. But I was on such a high because of the summit in Belize. I mean, everything was just, there was a delegation that went over to Belize from Florida, and that delegation was No More Broken Hearts, led by Dr. Bendros Mendigal, because her business, which was celebrating its 20th anniversary, was domestic violence. So that's why she and a group of women went over. So I was just on a high. So by the time I got back, though the pandemic had hit, mentally, I was on a roll. So then the other two, and one was finishing this book. And it was interesting because when I went back to the book after the summit was all over and done, I saw that, I finished more than I had thought. So I just added on a journal and a workbook, but the basis, interviews, all of that was done. So that gave me the second one. The third one ended up being the most problematic because I wanted to learn how to create a webinar. So it had to do with technology. I'm not a techie. I'm not lost, but I'm not a techie. It was learning how to create a webinar out of one of the topics that was very popular that I used. And I was thinking about which one, conflict resolution, bullying, warning signs of violence, the LGBT issues, that community, all of those are ones I have been doing for years and years. But what was the main focus, not just in this country, but globally, last summer, it was race. after police brutality, after George Floyd's death, after the marches globally, it was race. So I decided, and that's when I said I was going to circle back to it. I started out with the race as a topic with the Anti-Defamation League and did many other things having to do with race and or African American history. One of the things that people don't realize is that I was one of the 20 educators in the country selected to do a curriculum for African American history several years ago. And this was in the country. And so I had been really involved with race and African and African American history, even with University of Miami, for several times over the years, and it was very successful. And so I selected race as the topic because of I hope that it will not be a trend. I hope it will not be a hot topic, because so many corporations have come a long way when it comes to race and diversity and the understanding of what needs to be done. But I started out with writing a webinar, and I did just what the instructors, I took 2 different classes, hired a consultant. I did just what they said do not do. They said all the newbies tend to look for perfection. They keep tweaking it and changing it, rather than, that's okay, use your beta testers, the consultant told me, and go in and put it out there, and you'll see what works and do not work. I kept tweaking and turning and twisting. And it ended up being 4 modules. I hired Artie because we were still connected, to be over the parent crushing group on Facebook that was created for the module. And for it ended up being a master class. It was so long, had to be all kind of bells and whistles. I had affiliates. I called Rishma in.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought you were going to talk about with Wingspan Academy. I think that you should tell the listeners about Wingspan Academy.
It was amazing, because what I thought was going to be one webinar
turned into an academy.
Adding on so much to it, it ended up being Wingspan Academy, and it had not been planned that way. But I just had so much to it. And this was by November. And so I said I was determined that I was going to launch this sometime soon. So I invited others to come in with a joint venture. You taught me.
Yes.
A joint venture, and for them to put in their courses. These were all either professors or super.
And let's talk about that, since we're talking about business models.
Could you explain what a joint venture is?
Yeah, right. So your original business model for this was going to be your webinar. Then you realized the expansiveness of it and thought, well, we're going to joint venture with other content creators or collaborators, meaning there were other professionals coming in to do their video, and Priscilla's company would then do a joint venture with them where she would put the video on her academy site, and then you can go from there to figure out which modules you would like to purchase, and there's a fee sharing and all that goes along with a joint venture. But it just goes to show another transformation of your business model, because you started off with one thing, and then your entire business model completely changed into more of a collaboration, joint venture, profit sharing arrangement. So that just goes to show out there for our business owners that you can start with one thing.
I don't think I would have thought of that, because I had never done a joint venture.
That's okay. And a profit sharing.
Like, okay. It makes sense.
It makes sense, because you want to do the profit sharing with them as well. So it just goes to show that you can transform your company to fit whatever need you have at the time. I don't want people to think, and I get this all the time, well, this is how I've always done it, or I'm stuck doing this. No, let's figure it out. Let's do something different. Let's make it work for everyone involved, because you had all these other collaborators that were so willing to put their modules up there and to teach different aspects for the academy, that why limit yourself where you can offer more to the public. So it's just, one of those things, another transformational thing. It's the relationships, it's the resources, it's being flexible enough where you see you had one vision in mind that you had planned for, but then you can go ahead and change that through joint ventures or any sort of legal device that you can. And that is what I think transformation is about. We've just been talking. We have 5 more minutes. I want to ask you, I know. The last question I want to ask you is, so what's next for you? What is it that either Wingspan Academy, Fabulous Merchandise, Wingspan Seminars, what is the next transformation that you're going to be making for your company or trajectory?
What's very, very important is that I make sure that I'm fulfilling my purpose and living the life the way that I really want to live it. Not because I need to, because I want to live it, because we only have one of those. And so, and even though I accomplished all 3 goals last year, implementing, marketing, all of that, creating new websites, all of that is a whole different animal. So that's where I am right this minute. I've hired a company, a PR company, to help guide me through the marketing and how to put it out there correctly. And that's where I am now. So I launched it in February, but I'm going to have a relaunch as soon as Pam Perry says it's a good idea. But I purposely did that so that will relieve me to travel more and to speak more and to write more. And one of the things that we didn't get to is the conflicts that were caused by the pandemic.
Right, yes.
Are this big. And so
absolutely.
If you check out PriscillaDames.com, there are 3 ebooks there that surviving COVID, 1 for self-care, 2 for couples, and 3 if you have children, and they're free. They're free. So I'm still really concerned because the stats are up in domestic violence. They're up in suicide. People are so lonely. They're up in depression. And all of those are conflicts.
And one of your focus too is on children, right? For the academy, one of your major focus is on children and how this conflict affects children, because there's a long period of time where they had to stay home by themselves. So it creates a lot of problems. And we will put that website on our Minding Your Business page so that people can have access to your books that are free, free, guys. It's free out there for you. And again, that my business law attorney side is going, why? You didn't talk to me about that before you put it up there for free, but I'll let that one slide. I guess we'll talk about that privately. But if you're giving it out for free, I could just see myself, how are you making money on this? No. I don't want our audience to think that it's all about money for me, because it's not. But at the end of the day, if you're running a business, we're not doing none of your companies are nonprofits, right? So they're all for-profit companies. That's why I'm stressing so much on this. But we will put your website up on our Minding Your Business page and promote it that way as well. Do you have the 3 different books that you can show the camera? Because this is going to be a YouTube video as well.
They're ebooks, and they're
ebooks.
They're actually in, and that's why they were free. I could do that. They're in PriscillaDames.com. But all of this is, I finished the goals, but remember I took all of them way over there, knocked the goals out of the park. And so now I'm learning how to implement marketing, hire a marketing company, and how to do it the best and smartest way. And I want to invite everyone to just consider going back to beliefs, because when the COVID, when this pandemic is over, I'm going back to Belize. And so I want to continue what I started there.
Absolutely. We are going to try to, well, depending on how the situation in Belize is as well, because remember, we're maybe slightly getting over it, and hopefully there's no more variants that come out. Knock on wood, there's no more variants that come out, but Belize is in a definitely different situation. So we would only do, it'll take a while. So we will only do from our chamber, we will only do trade missions when we know it's safe to take people there again, or we can control the environment. But yes, I'm chomping at the bit to go back. We used to go back twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year, and now it's 0. So we're definitely wanting to have that connection again within the women's department. And meet a whole new crop of ministers, because now our government changed. So now we have a whole new crop of people to introduce you to.
And in the meantime, we could do webinars online, focusing on like you all have done, and I have done. And so when it's time to go back, we'll go back.
We'll go back in strength. So any last words, Priscilla? You want to let people know how they can get in contact with you besides just your website? I want you to be able to let them know your social media accounts, your number, your email.
If you go to wingspanseminars.net or wingspanacademy.com, priscilladames.com, you'll find all of the information on there. But remember, they are a work in progress, though I will be releasing both, I think, in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But just come on over and wish me well. And please let Rishma know if you want one of those free books. And if you send her your email address, then I will give you the link so you could just get any of those books. But we're still in this together.
Absolutely. So you can email info@mybshow.com. Let me know that you're interested in any one of the ebooks or all of them, and we can go ahead and send that to you. So for my wrap up, I want to say that transforming your business is very necessary for survival, especially now. If you're not thinking about doing something different, then you will eventually have to change, because this pandemic has caused a lot of reflection in how we go about doing things. And I want to also say that transforming your business from reflection, relationships, as Priscilla mentioned, and also being flexible. The transformation means that you have a degree of flexibility, that you know what's good for your business and what's going to work out better. You might have something in mind and plan for it, but that doesn't mean you can't always change as well. So make sure that you know your business, you work hard on your business, because success comes when you're minding your business.
That's right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
The content on Minding Your Business is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific legal advice. This show discusses general legal issues affecting business owners. Opinions of the guests are not necessarily that of the show. If you need assistance with your specific legal issue, please consult with a licensed attorney.